Please clap.
Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person. Yosemite's one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
But you haven't. Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy.
Amazing. He can't sit down. He's got a burning in his butthole. He's got a fire. He's got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Big, massive dumps.
Oh, I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real.
You ain't seen nothing yet until you see the flaming butthole.
Putting us on our knees to China.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
I'm a fatty fat though.
Hey everybody, you know what time it is. Time for Around the Nation. Jeff Waldorf here. Welcome to the show, everybody. Hopefully you're having a fantastic Thursday afternoon. It's about to get either better or worse, depending on how you view things. And so fun times, as always. We got a bunch of different stuff we want to talk about today. So, of course, we're going to dunk on probably the worst presidential ticket I've ever heard, at least so far. Terrible. Terrible. You're going to love that. We also are going to talk about Glenn Beck. It appears that he's got COVID. Uh-oh. Oh, noes. What is going to happen?
Oh, no!
Well, we'll see. We also have Trump versus DeSantis, and we have an Arizona Republican literally running away from a reporter asking questions. Fantastic story. And then, of course, we're going to roast Candace Owens for trying to grift off of the death of Bob Saget. So, yeah, fun stories. We'll dive in. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Very important that you do so. We got a lot of video clips as well, so let's jump in. Just dive right into this shit, into the crap. All right. Glenn Beck apparently has some pretty bad news. He's got the COVID. Now, while getting COVID isn't nearly as deadly for those who are vaccinated and boosted, people like Glenn Beck are not vaccinated and apparently have a much more difficult time dealing with or even surviving the virus. In fact, the unvaccinated are way more likely, about at least 13 times more likely to end up in the hospital with serious symptoms. Now, this isn't the first time that Glenn Beck had to battle COVID. And in fact, he's going to go on Mark Levin's show and they're going to have this exchange. Take a look.
Now, do you have COVID right now?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I've been off for about a week. I mean, I've been doing my show. It's a lighter case, but it's now starting to go into my lungs today, and a little disturbing. But I'm on all the medication and treatment and everything else. So we'll see.
So wait a minute, it's
all
going
good.
into your. Have you gotten any monoclonal? I'm serious about this.
No, the monoclonal doesn't seem to be working for the new strain, and you can't. But I'm on ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, fluvoxamine. I'm on a bunch of different. I mean, and my doctors are hitting it really hard.
You know what's amazing? When we tried to get that stuff, my pharmacist looked at me like I was, a heroin addict.
You don't say. You don't say. Oh, hey, it turns out when I asked for the horse dewormer and fish tank cleanser and all the other stuff that doesn't work, my doctor looked at me like I was a moron. No kidding. Gee, I wonder why he would think that. He or she, I don't know. I just don't get why they would think I'm a moron. No self-awareness at all. None. But what's interesting here is the admission that the monoclonal antibody treatment doesn't work for Omicron. So that's very interesting because here we have Republicans that are actually able to, understand that studies and again, there are numerous studies that have been proven that monoclonal antibodies are not effective against the Omicron variant. And so they can clearly see that the science on that and believe the science on that, but not on the vaccines. Very, it kind of shows you that they really love to pick and choose what kind of stuff or science that they want to believe in. And so, monoclonal no longer works. They understand that, but also my natural immunity, my ivermectins, and the zinc. We got to get the zinc. Well, obviously, if you already had COVID, if you had COVID once and then you caught it again, well, then that seems to be a failure of natural immunity to prevent your reinfection. Plus, of course, all the stuff that right-wingers have been taking that they claim to be a prophylactic. What's next? Is Glenn Beck going to start drinking his own pee? I mean, again, it's not like that hasn't already been suggested by anti-vaxxers. But I've got more. There's more to this interview. Take a look.
Now, how long have you had this?
I've had it for about a week.
But it's not stabilizing?
Yeah, it's not. I'm not going downhill. I mean, I think I'm feeling better. It's just getting into my lungs, which is,
but that's the problem.
You want to avoid that. But I'm feeling better, and I'm, Mark, I am not concerned about it. I'm really not. I am so done with this whole COVID thing. I mean, I know it's real. Right now, everybody's getting sick because it's very contagious, but it's not nearly as deadly. I'm a fat, so that's probably not the best thing. And I've got some other issues, but that's just the way it is.
Oh yeah, you got some other issues, all right. I mean, your brain. Look, hey, maybe it's a good thing that he's taking ivermectin to try to get rid of the brain worms that he has. But no, seriously, the guy does not sound good. He sounds really, really not horrible, not like Ron DeSantis wheezing or having an emotional outburst, but he doesn't sound good. He sounds kind of bad, and I got bad news for him as well. Turns out, COVID being in your lungs, not a good thing. Actually a bad thing. But here's the thing. It's a respiratory infection. Guys, it was always in your lungs. Glenn, it was always in your lungs. That does not mean it's getting better. In fact, when you show symptoms, that's usually when it starts to get worse. Now, I remember Herman Cain tweeting from a hospital bed saying, you know what, I'm in the hospital. I'm feeling better though. I'm feeling great, feeling strong. Yeah. And then he died. The first winner of the Herman Cain Award, by the way. Now, I'm not saying Glenn Beck is going to die. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, and by the way, Omicron, yes, is a little less deadly than the Delta variant. If you are vaccinated. If you're unvaccinated, then it's still pretty deadly. And now also the other thing is you heard Glenn Beck calling himself a fatso, literally fat shaming himself. Now you might think, oh, that's odd. Maybe he's just being a little self-deprecating, whatever, right? Now I have that self-deprecating sense of humor, and I myself am a little bit of a fatso. But here's the thing. He says that for a reason. There's kind of a purpose around this. Because later on, he goes into minimizing COVID. We just have to live with it. Now, that's a conservative talking point where they basically have been claiming for some time now that no. The only people that are really at risk of COVID-19, of dying, are fat people. In fact, here's Jack Posobiec, right-wing troll, making that claim. He said, oh, most of the virus deaths come from people who are overweight. So basically, if you're a fatso, then of course, you're really the only ones that are dying from the virus. And if you're, if you're younger and if you're so-called healthy, and Candace Owens also made that claim. Well, when she was feuding with, for some reason I can't think of her name now. Meghan McCain, thank you. Meghan McCain, she was feuding with her and saying, well, Meghan McCain, you only took the vaccine because you're fat. And so, well, that's what they're doing. They're doing the fat shaming here. And they're using that to downplay the risk of COVID to people who are not fat. Because again, yes, okay. So now, obviously being obese, overweight, etc., is a risk factor, not just for COVID, but for other things, right? And so, according to the World Obesity Federation, obesity is a leading cause of complications. So, for example, if you have diabetes or whatever, from weight gain, as happens, also people who are not, obese can also get diabetes, but nonetheless, those kind of, health issues will also contribute to having difficulties fighting against COVID-19, which is why, of course, you should get vaccinated. It's even more important to get vaccinated. Now, the authors of the study do acknowledge that a country's age structure, relative wealth, and reporting capacity all have an impact on the amount of COVID-19 cases that are reported. And again, I'll also mention vaccination status. And in fact, while the World Obesity Federation's report does find some evidence that countries with higher obesity levels, like the United States, have reported the most COVID-19 deaths, it does not say that the most global virus deaths occurred in people who were overweight. The study just basically compared current obesity rates and COVID-19 death rates, whereas when you look at the United States has a 67% obesity rate and the second highest COVID death rate. Now, other factors are also included here. Like, for example, lockdowns, right? How we didn't have a lockdown period in the United States. People who are anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers, right? People who allowed this, and not just people, you have politicians, governors, people on the right and left, who have allowed this to basically spread. And so, you get back to work policies. Hey, you should go ahead and die for the stock market, all that stuff. You have people that are just ignoring or that had ignored, the warnings against gathering unmasked and going in and gathering unmasked in very large gatherings, which is affecting COVID. And so all of that contributes. And there are people who have died from COVID-19 or complications who are both overweight and not overweight. Again, I'm not saying that obese people don't have higher risk factors for complications with COVID-19 and therefore have a statistically higher chance of dying from the virus. That just means that I'm just saying that being obese is not the only factor, right? And so the right-wing narrative tends to be incredibly simplistic, saying only fatty, fat people get COVID, and therefore if you're not fat and if you're not old, and if you make the proper lifestyle choices, and that's really what the narrative comes down to. You fat people, why did you have to stuff another cheeseburger into your face? So, and since you did, if you get COVID and die, that's your fault. Because for the rest of us healthy people, COVID's totally fine and it's just like a mild cold. So, and understand that that's what that narrative ultimately boils down to is you get COVID and die, it's your fault. It's totally your fault, 100%, and therefore we shouldn't have any federal measures to combat COVID-19. So again, understand what this all boils down to, right? And what this narrative really means. And again, you don't really have to stretch it that far from a self-deprecating joke or what was, what could be considered to be a self-deprecating joke is actually a narrative going on here from the far right. And so, by the way, one more thing. Let me just point out how this is karma biting Glenn Beck in the ass. In fact, back in mid-April of 2021, Glenn Beck went on Tucker Carlson's show and basically argued that since he had already had COVID-19, why does he need to be vaccinated again? Why? Because first of all, he didn't get vaccinated in the first place. And, that prior infection was a different strain. Meaning this new strain, the natural immunity, the antibodies that you gain, which by the way, tend to fade out pretty fast, according to studies. So you're basically left with this new variant and the time passed with no protection. Meaning he should have gotten vaccinated. This is why you get vaccinated. This is why. So you don't end up like Glenn Beck. And by the way, speaking of Glenn Beck, a lot of you have been noticing the picture, right? Honestly, when I saw his picture, I felt like he was going to try to sell me a greasy bucket of chicken. Just saying. I ain't interested in his chicken. 11 herbs and spices. Y'all. Okay, anyway. Let's move on. KFC is a salad for Trump. Hey, look, I can't, really talk about people's eating habits because I don't eat the best. And I'm considered, obese, right? So I'm overweight. Even though since August, I've lost a good 20 pounds. So I'm kind of working on it, but I'm still in the 230s. And so I still got a lot of weight to lose. So I can't really go after Glenn Beck, the whole thing, throwing stones in glass houses and all that. Plus, I also don't believe in fat shaming, so I think that's something that we need to avoid. But nonetheless, thank you. Thank you very much for the compliments, by the way. All right, anyway, let's move on. How tall am I? I'm 5'9". So not very tall. It probably doesn't help that I drink all these coffees too. I bet I'd lose weight if I stopped drinking soda. Oh yeah. It helps me. Every time I drink soda, I stop drinking soda. Like 10 pounds melt right off. Gone. Good job. It takes a lot of work. But it really didn't though. It's actually when I started taking medication for my ADHD. So that's when I really noticed I wasn't as hungry as often. So I didn't snack and any of that. So, and I guess, and I lost weight. Good for me. But thank you. I appreciate it. And I do drink a lot less soda than I used to. All right. Anyway, Candace Owens. Right-wing grifter Candace Owens is already trying to make money off the death of Bob Saget. Now, sadly, the actor, well known from Full House, and a staple of a lot of our childhoods, actually, was found dead last week in an Orlando hotel room. Now, local authorities had said that they had found no signs of foul play or any drug use, and that the 65-year-old actor appeared to have died in his sleep. Now, 65 is quite young, and so we're all pretty shocked at his death, and, especially so soon after the death of Betty White. And so, we kind of lost America's grandma and America's dad all in a pretty small time frame. And so now, while we're all understandably upset, Candace Owens is going to go further. What she's going to do is she's going to start spreading conspiracy theories about how Bob Saget had died because of the vaccine.
I'll say this. There is something that doesn't feel right about Bob's sudden and unexpected death. I'm sorry, does that sound like a conspiracy? Am I traversing down conspiracy lane by even saying that? I've done this before, haven't I? Am I a conspiracy theorist or am I Nostradamus? The answer is neither. I'm just not on Big Pharma's payroll, and I refuse to peddle in their lies. And so to that end, today, I'm going to point out another truth, and it will likely be deemed a conspiracy theory until it's not. There are too many healthy individuals like Bob Saget, who we know have received their vaccinations, who are dropping dead suddenly and unexpectedly with no further explanation. Healthy athletes, young students in their physical prime, the majority of them males, dropping suddenly and unexpectedly in the middle of games from heart issues. What we know for a fact is that these people are being mandated to take the vaccine. And we know for a fact that these vaccines come with a warning that they bring about myocarditis. But the media is once again gaslighting the public, pretending that to even take notice of this very alarming trend is a conspiracy. The problem isn't that healthy men are dying. The problem is that you're noticing it. Where are the fact checkers? All of this to say that I don't know why a healthy man who is in the middle of a comedy tour suddenly and unexpectedly drops dead in his hotel room. But I do know that we have a right to ask the question.
All right, so look, Candace Owens, obviously gross. So now she asks, whoa, where are the fact checkers? Myocarditis, oh my God, look at that. People have got myocarditis and then they died from the vaccine. All right, so now first of all, fact checkers have already admitted that, yes, the CDC has noted that myocarditis and pericarditis are actually potential side effects of the vaccine among people aged 30 and younger. However, the reports of this happening are incredibly rare. Furthermore, there are actually very few reported instances of death directly caused by the vaccine. So you have a very, very small chance of having a negative reaction. And I remember older reporting, by the way, about this really affecting the J&J vaccines. And so, yes, by the way, that put the J&J in a pretty bad spot. They ended up having to halt the J&J for a while. The Janssen, while they were doing lots of reviews and investigations, into this. So now what's interesting here is, again, how she tries to apply all of this into a conspiracy about Bob Saget. Okay? And so, by the way, to suggest that the vaccine is killing people is not only, not backed up by factual information, but also, again, puts more people in danger by discouraging them from taking the vaccine. But she couches this in the veneer of, well, I'm just asking questions. No, you're not asking questions. What you're doing is that you're pushing a narrative that isn't true. Vaccines have saved millions of people's lives in this country. Now, she also pulls out the trick of, well, I'm just doing this because I'm a brave truth teller who is not on the payroll of Big Pharma. Neither am I, bitch. In fact, I've had a lot of criticism for the business model of pharmaceutical companies. Price hikes, for example, for life-saving medications. Been covering this for a long time. Lobbying against making drugs like insulin affordable. Patent trolling. Companies like Purdue Pharma pushing OxyContin on people with only mild pain in order to increase their sales while lying about safety. All right? Buying the rights to publicly funded research and development. And then, once they have the patent secured from buying these, again, publicly funded research, taking these drugs, and then what? They'll just own the patent basically forever to the end of time and jack up the prices for these medications so that normal people, average people, will not be able to afford life-saving medications. All right? Not only that, but you also had pharmaceutical companies like Mylan, who were headed up by Heather Bresch, the daughter of Joe Manchin, who would go and collude with Pfizer in order to make sure that a competitor for their insulin, EpiPen, would not, that they wouldn't have a competitor so that they could keep a monopoly on these drugs. All of these things are real criticisms of Big Pharma, and they are valid criticisms. It is the business model. It is a business model of greed and avarice, and reason why these companies need to be nationalized and the profit motives eliminated from healthcare. 100%. So now, does Candace Owens criticize any of that? Any of that greed? Any of that corruption? Any of the revolving door? Seeing as how both parties in Congress are bought by pharmaceutical companies and lobbyists? No, of course not. She doesn't talk about it because she doesn't care about the real reason. All she's doing is trying to scare people away from taking life-saving medications. And because she's paid to. She is paid to. Candace Owens is appealing to anti-vaxxers so that she can peddle her own dubious healthcare supplements that may or may not turn you blue. Literally. And look, there's a huge market on it, for this stuff on the right wing. And a lot of it is, again, partly due to the greed of the pharmaceutical company and the distrust in institutions, which isn't entirely unearned. Honestly, when you have this profit motive in healthcare and medicine denying people drugs. But again, there are grifters out there that are selling you things like, or trying to sell you things like chlorine dioxide, colloidal silver, ivermectin, instead of advising you to get a vaccine. In fact, they're trying to scaremonger you away from getting vaccines. And they're using stories like this. Anti-vaxxers, like as soon as he passed away, anti-vaxxers immediately flooded social media and said, oh, no. We know what it was. It was a jab. He had just gotten his booster. They did the same thing with Betty White passed away, which we know is because of a stroke, which isn't uncommon for somebody who is 99. Look, I don't know what killed Bob Saget, but I can guarantee probably wasn't the COVID vaccine. Because again, there isn't really evidence of it killing people en masse. In fact, the VAERS system, which they cite the VAERS system a lot in their so-called evidence of vaccines killing people. Well, that really relies on self-reporting and has been flooded with anti-vaxxers reporting deaths that had nothing to do with the vaccine. Let me give you an example of the data here. As of September 27th of last year, among more than the 390 million doses of COVID-19 shots administered in the U.S., the VAERS received 8,164 reports of death, which is a 0.0021% among people who are vaccinated. Now, that doesn't mean that the vaccines were the cause of the death. Healthcare providers are required to report any death after vaccination to VAERS, even if there's no indication that it was caused by the vaccine, and reported incidents are not evidence of a causal link. But facts don't matter. If anything, we've learned in this pandemic that they don't care about facts. Now, as I've said before, Candace Owens is an absolute grifter. I'm pretty sure she is vaccinated, probably boosted as well. But at the same time, it's very clear that she is running a grift on her audience because she wants to sell things. I don't have any problem with people selling things. Sell t-shirts, sell mugs. No, you're going to go and sell colloidal silver and claim that, no, that's the only trade. I take it. I take a spoonful every day. Bullshit. That's enough to actually turn people blue. That's all they care about is money. And that's what it is. And by the way, she wants people to buy into her fake cures and to not protect themselves with vaccines. And again, these fake cures, she knows that they're fake. Also, she can do the very same thing that she claims to hate about Big Pharma, which is lie to steal your money. It's not that she's standing up against their greed. She just hates that they're competition. VAERS report. VAERS reports are not accurate because they're self-reporting. That's the problem with the VAERS system. It can be a useful tool, though, in trying to find some correlation between a large number of reported cases. But again, that's just a starting point for researchers. Was Bob Saget's death revealed today? Okay, I didn't see that one. That'd be very interesting to go and learn. I am interested in seeing it, so I'll have to look that up. All right. I couldn't believe that Alex Jones is making $165 million a year off supplements. Not surprising. Over 3 years, yes. Still, that's like, I mean, a couple of years were like 50, 59, 60 million. Jeez. All right. Someone on VAERS claimed the side effect turned them into the Hulk. Hilarious. I could call into VAERS and report, my vaccine giving me 5G powers. Doesn't mean it's true. All right. Former President Donald Trump is surprisingly still leaning into touting the benefits of the vaccine. And now is even throwing some shade at Ron DeSantis. In fact, recently Trump went after so-called gutless politicians who have declined to be open about their vaccination status. In fact, here is him on Newsmax saying just that.
I've taken it. I've had the booster. Many politicians, I watched a couple of politicians be interviewed, and one of the questions was, did you get the booster? Because they had the vaccine. And they're answering it like, in other words, the answer is yes, but they don't want to say it. Because they're gutless. You got to say it. Whether you had it or not, say it. Right. But the fact is that I think the vaccine has saved tens of millions of people throughout the world. I have had absolutely no side effects. I've had it like other people have had it, nothing special. I've had it.
All right, so, wow, you got to say it. You got to say it. Whether you've had it or not, say it. He's correct. Yes. Now, would you look at that, too? Calling him gutless. Now, of course, ironically, he's also kind of gutless in a way because he didn't call out DeSantis specifically, even though we were pretty sure that's who he was talking about. Now, Jeff, you might ask, how do you know he was talking about Ron DeSantis? Well, his comments came a couple weeks after DeSantis had said this.
The other day, Dr. Fauci said, we could be that fully vaccinated means 3 shots, which is 2 shots for the vaccination and then 1 booster shot. Have you gotten the booster?
So I've done whatever I did, the normal shot, and that at the end of the day is people's individual decisions about what they want to do.
Okay. Now, I love that, of course, that he refused to answer the question. Again, it's super weak. It is very beta male of him not to admit it.
Beta.
So, I mean, it's super sad. And of course, we know the reason that he's doing it. A lot of the Republican base, unfortunately, is filled with people who are anti-vaxxers that have, bought the line from conservative pundits and politicians, other politicians that have cast doubt on the vaccine. And so, I mean, again, we were just talking about how Candace Owens literally blamed the death of Bob Saget. Oh, no, I'm just asking questions on the vaccine. And so, that's the situation, right? And so he knows this. Ron DeSantis is not a dumb person. He does some very dumb things, or at least according to us. However, he knows the base. He's in Florida. He knows they're crazy. And so he doesn't want to get himself in trouble. Because of course, right? And so now Trump, what's interesting about Trump is that he doesn't care. Honestly, which I think is kind of refreshing in this case. Because he's basically saying, hey, DeSantis, what are you, weak? Are you a beta male? Are you a sad beta?
Beta male.
What are you doing? How could just tell us if you got the vaccine or not? Just tell us. Tell people. That's all I'm asking. So look, for me, if Donald Trump's doing the right thing, well, that's good. And look, calling out Republicans, for example, who refuse to be honest about their vaccination status, it's a net positive. Now, what's interesting, of course, is you can go back and criticize Trump for basically hiding it the same way that DeSantis is now hiding it until he recently came out, and until Trump, as I said, recently came out and was like, oh yeah, a very strong vaccine, very, very strong. I'm very in favor, saved millions of people's lives. Well, then why didn't you, publicly get the vaccine when you were president? But anyway, okay, look, honestly though, that's fair criticism. I've criticized him before on that. I don't care about his reasons at the end of the day, though. Now, are they going to be self-serving? Yeah, of course, it's Donald Trump we're talking about, obviously. But at the same time, well, actually, more of the reasons, but I mean, Ron DeSantis is a possible 2024 contender for the Republican nomination. Donald Trump wants that nomination. But and in fact, some Trump-supporting Republicans have even said that they wanted DeSantis instead of Donald Trump. Even though the majority of the party still wants Trump. But DeSantis, for a lot of them, is the second choice, which I'm sure bothers Donald Trump quite a bit because it is competition. In fact, I think Donald Trump did also, in an interview, I think it was like back in October, he was like, oh, I know I would crush Ron DeSantis or break his back. Bigly, greatly. All right, well, sure. But again, the bigger point is, touting vaccines, good, keep doing it. Keep doing it. It's great. I'll take it. I'll take it. Because you know what? It's just a bonus that it's pitting Republicans against each other, as well as maybe, hopefully, convincing some Republicans to go and get the vaccine. Even if it's in secret, I don't really care. As long as they get it, that's good enough for me. And as far as Trump and DeSantis, let them fight. Let them fight. All right. Again, I'm not a difficult person to please. Vaccines were the best thing Trump ever did. Pretty much the only thing, but yeah. Well, there was ending the TPP as well. That was good too. Give him credit there. I wasn't a fan of the Trans-Pacific Partnership as written. And I did a lot of segments about that. All right. Anyway, let's do it. An Arizona Republican recently ran away from a reporter after being asked about a phony certification letter that was alleging that Trump had won the state in 2020. Now, of course, Donald Trump did not win Arizona. Nonetheless, a number of these phony certification letters went out and actually arrived in Washington, D.C. And so on Tuesday, Arizona State Representative Jake Hoffman, who was one of the Republicans who signed one of those phony certification letters, was basically questioned by a reporter who was just asking some simple questions about his role in that forgery. Take a look.
One, to what authority did you find yourself as an elector?
So in unprecedented times, unprecedented action is occurred. There is no case law. There's no precedent that exists as to whether or not an election that is currently being litigated in the courts has due standing, which is why we felt it appropriate to provide Congress and the Vice President with dueling opinions.
Did you have direction from anybody in doing this? Was it you, 11, yourself doing this, or did someone give you advice on the manner in which you can do it?
So I was one of the electors, right? I'm not in charge of the electors, so you would need
How did you hear about it?
You would need to ask the party chair.
How did you hear about it? How did you hear about the plan? Were you just told to be someone?
You would need to ask the party chair that question.
Right, but you're the person who received the call. You showed up, right? How did you know to show up that day?
So as I said, you can go ahead and ask the party chair the logistics of it.
Ask her how you got a phone call to go somewhere?
You're welcome to talk to them about the
Do you
logistics.
not know how you arrived at a place?
Thank you. I appreciate your
Do
question.
you really not
Thank
know
you so
how
much.
you got a call?
Have a great one.
The other question, I was hoping
Gone. Yeah, a phone call. No, don't ask me about a phone call. No. That I claim to receive because, I did sign on to that letter to be an elector. Again, the guy's claiming to be an elector for Donald Trump as part of Donald Trump's supposed win in Arizona. And he's just like, you're just going to have to ask the party chair about that one because I don't know anything, even though I claim to be an elector. Hilarious. Again, perfectly valid question. In fact, I give props to that reporter. Not only is his voice badass, let me just say that, a very strong voice. Great questioning. Excellent line of questioning. Which is absolutely true. Again, if you were an actual elector, as you claim to be, then you would have been called into service and you would have actually been able to answer that question of who called you into service. but you weren't. And you knew it. You lied. That's all it was. It was a lie. It was a very obvious case of, oh shit, I just got caught. Run away, run away, run away, run away. Gotta go. I'm out of here. and again, how this fits into the greater scheme of things is that I believe that these phony forged certifications were part of the Peter Navarro, Steve Bannon plan to try to steal the election. That was called the Green Bay Sweep, right? And so what they were going to do is they were going to fake certify the state elections for Donald Trump. And there are already fake certifications that are out there in Arizona, Michigan, and Nevada. I have more information about those. But they basically wanted these electors in key states to go and vote for Donald Trump in the Electoral College and to keep Donald Trump in power. And they were going to, of course, use the claim, the lie, the big lie about voter fraud. Voter fraud. We got voter fraud. We got dead people voting. We got all these irregularities. And so we don't know who won. Oh my God, look at that. And so that all, of course, hinged on Mike Pence refusing to certify the election in front of Congress, which, by the way, is a ceremonial role. It wouldn't have affected anything. But since most people don't actually know that, especially Republicans, they would have used the time granted by Pence's refusal to push out propaganda. Again, Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro basically said that we were going to get about 24 hours of nonstop media coverage, to which, of course, pushed propaganda about the big lie. And so that propaganda, not necessarily directed towards the people, but directed towards state-level Republicans in these specific swing states that would then recall their electors for Joe Biden and then push ones like Mr. Hoffman to go to Washington to certify the election for Donald Trump, even though he didn't actually win the election. He got less votes. So now, of course, thankfully that did not happen. But it could have. There are 100 congressmen. Peter Navarro claimed that there are 100 congressmen, Republicans, who were ready to support the Green Bay Sweep. And of course, we find out as well that there were Republicans in the states that were prepped and ready to do so by putting out these fakes and these forgeries that many had been sent to the National Archives. In fact, we've got more details on that. In Michigan, a pro-Trump group sent one in and got rejected because it didn't have an official state seal. They could immediately tell, this is a fake, this isn't real. In Arizona, they tried using the state seal and got busted. They're like, this isn't an official document at all. You should cease and desist from using the official state seal on documents that are misleading. And in Nevada, the state Republican Party had sent the federal government documentation certifying the election for Trump, even though the state's real electors had already certified for Biden. In fact, here's an 8 News Now report. And by the way, this is a local Las Vegas CBS affiliate that reported, quote, the certificate, which looks much different than the official state one, reads, "We, the undersigned, being the duly elected and qualified electors for President and Vice President of the United States of America from the state of Nevada, do hereby certify 6 electoral votes for Trump." Now, of course, there were not the duly elected and qualified electors. That's just simply not true. An envelope accompanying the documents indicates that the packet was sent via certified mail to the National Archives from rural Minden, Nevada. Later that day, it arrived in Washington, D.C. on December 22nd. A few hours after the official state process had ended, a video accompanied a tweet from the Nevada GOP, the Nevada official Republican Party, that said, quote, "History made in Carson City." As footage showed Republican electors signing papers on a table, the event was live streamed on the Right Side Broadcasting Network of fake electors signing documentation that was a forgery, that were phonies, certifying the election for Donald Trump. This tweet said, "Our brave electors standing up for what is right and casting their electoral votes for Donald Trump." The state's party Twitter account later tweeted, "We believe in fair elections and will continue to fight against voter fraud in the Silver State." Oh, what they had did right there, that's the actual fraud. Those were fraudulent electors. That was not real. They were playing make-believe. They were cosplaying electors. Impersonation. That's messed up. That is super messed up. All right, so now, speaking of voter fraud, right? So you know how many cases of voter fraud they found in Nevada in the 2020 election? 10 possibly deceased voters that cast a ballot, and 10 people that had voted twice. Whoa! Oh my God! Wow! Oh my God! The voter fraud. There's so much voter fraud. Now you may remember I did a story probably about a month ago, maybe longer, but there was a woman, a couple, I should say, who alleged voter fraud. And actually, it was a husband of a deceased woman, Rosemary Hartle. Now, Rosemary Hartle died from cancer back in 2017, before the 2020 election. Now, her husband, or widow, Kirk Hartle, claimed that somebody had stolen his wife's ballot and voted in her name. Oh my God, how could you do that? Must have been voter fraud. Now, Republicans picked up on that case. You know, people like Matt Schlapp, who talked about this. And look at all the voter fraud that's happening. Look at what happened to the case of Rosemary Hartle. I can't believe the Democrats would go in and do something like that and steal somebody's vote who's dead. Look at all the dead people that are voting. Now, it turns out, we find out later on that Kirk Hartle was the one doing the fraud, intentionally using his wife's ballot to vote for Donald Trump, not Joe Biden. Oops. Oh no, look what happened. Oh no. Guys, that's where the fraud is. The fraud is on the right wing. That's what they keep doing. Now, I have one more fun thing. This is an interesting quote here. Now we go to Michigan. So one Republican official who was involved in the Michigan attempt to send in a phony certification is a woman named Kathy Burden. So now, according to a December 14, 2020 memorandum provided to the January 6th committee, Burden, a Republican National Committee woman from the state of Michigan, sent a forged GOP elector certificate to the U.S. Senate, the U.S. Archivist, the Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson's office of Michigan, and Robert Yonker, the Chief Judge of U.S. District Court for Michigan's Western District, according to reports by the Detroit News. The newspaper, who revealed this thanks to an open records request, went and asked the group, hey, why did you send in a fake certificate, or I'm sorry, a fake certification of an election that Biden had actually won? Now, again, that certification was for Donald Trump. So now here's what Burden said. Quote, I can't comment on anything like that. That was a long time ago. End quote. Wait. wait. I mean, I cannot comment. It just happened just such a long time ago. It was literally just over a year ago. I mean, seriously. Hey, but it was so long ago. Oh, you're trying to get me to answer questions from last year? Oh my God. That's too long ago. And I just can't answer it. What a ridiculous excuse. What a ridiculous excuse. Bullshit. He tried to send fraudulent election documents. Imagine if the other side had done this. had even attempted something like this. You know what would happen? There would be investigation after investigation, worse than Benghazi, by the way. Every Fox News pundit, their hair would be on fire. Right-wingers would be calling for public executions. I kid you not, of any official. But you see, your Republicans do it, and they just walk away when you ask them about it. Or they say, I don't know, you don't ask me about it. It was so long ago. The last election. This is where we are. No, look, I think people need to be held accountable for this. There needs to be some accountability here. For attempting not to just undermine this election, it's not just about 2020, folks. No, they're undermining democracy as a whole. It's going to be every single election. From now on, you're going to always have this either attempt to steal it based on the nonsense of voter fraud or whatever excuse they're going to come out with. And so there has to be some consequences for continuously lying about these elections and really undermining our entire democratic processes. All right. So now we get to all that to get to the last story here. The worst Democratic ticket ever. Yikes. In what is probably the worst idea ever, a New York Times columnist recently floated a new presidential unity ticket for 2024. Biden-Cheney. Yikes. So now earlier this week, this columnist for the New York Times, Thomas Friedman, wrote that President Biden should get rid of Kamala Harris and select Republican Representative Liz Cheney as his running mate in 2024. Now, his reasoning is super bizarre. Wow. Now, of course, he's going to use the example of opposition groups to come together to form a unity government in Israel. And so now Israel has a parliamentary system, and so they have to go and they oftentimes have to form coalition governments with each other, the multitude of parties. Our system is actually quite different. And so the logistics of even having that working, again, it's not going to work the same way here in this country. And even so, the choices here are just disastrous. All right, so let's move on. Let's go to his what he wrote about this. Quote, "It is the most diverse national unity government in Israel's history, one that stretches from Jewish settlers on the right all the way to an Israeli Arab Islamist party and super liberals on the left. Most important, it's holding together, getting stuff done, and muting the hyperpolarization that was making Israel ungovernable." Really, what have they gotten done? What have they gotten done? I mean, other than, by the way, bare minimum here, fighting COVID. That's one of the major things they pass is anti-COVID measures. Well, that's great. Again, that is literal bare minimum. Literal bare minimum. But anyway, my question is, all right, so you want a coalition government, right? Well, now, obviously, Liz Cheney is supposed to represent the right wing. Well, where's the left? Where's the left in this unity ticket? Where's the super liberals, right? I mean, one of them is a hardcore Republican and a war hawk, and the other is a Cheney. I mean, come on. No, seriously, though. Where's the leftist voice on that ticket? Where's the progressive voice? You have the establishment. Basically, you have establishment Republican and an establishment corporate Democrat. That's what you have. Both conservative, pro-austerity. And so, look, progressives in this scenario get sidelined. But there's more, he writes. Is that what America needs in 2024? A ticket of Joe Biden and Liz Cheney? And then goes on to, of course, ask, or to do other hypothetical matchups. Joe Biden and Senator Lisa Murkowski, or Kamala Harris and Senator Mitt Romney. These are all terrible. Stacey Abrams and Liz Cheney, Amy Klobuchar and Liz Cheney, or any other such combination. This dude really likes Liz Cheney. I do not like Liz Cheney. I am not in favor of Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney is awful. It doesn't matter to me that she is anti-Trump. That is an incredibly low bar that unfortunately most Republicans do not clear. More importantly, though, is the type of policies that Liz Cheney would promote, which is similar, if not the same, as Donald Trump and the greater Republican Party. The only difference is Donald Trump was rude on Twitter and was actually very honest about Republican policies. Whereas people like Liz Cheney, they try to hide their horrible policies under a veneer of niceness. Oh no, we all get along. I don't like the crassness of people like Donald Trump and how he's so mean. He was so mean on social media. And that's what it is. That's the real problem. No, it's not. The problem is the policies. The problem is the policy. All right. Now, here's my other question, right? So, if you wanted a real unity ticket, why not have a unity ticket with progressives? A real progressive. Now, after all, when you're talking about wanting to appeal, which I assume was the entire point, right? Talking about, hey, we should have a unity ticket to appeal to the American people so that the Democrats could theoretically start winning elections. Because, again, Joe Biden's approval ratings are fairly underwater. He's quite unpopular at this point. There's no high job approval rating. All right? And so you would think that a unity ticket with, a progressive and a member of the Democratic Party might actually lead to some progressive policy that the American people might actually want. Things like expanding Medicare, which is very popular, paid leave, very popular, affordable or free childcare, very popular, lowering the cost of prescription drug prices by allowing Medicare to negotiate these prices with pharmaceutical companies, things like that. What about higher wages? What about benefits? Running on those things. What about using the power that Joe Biden has right now to cancel student loan debt? What about using the power of under the pandemic to basically dictate healthcare policy and expand Medicare to everyone? What about that? What about that? Now, none of those things, of course, are supported by Republicans. And really, in reality, none of those are either supported by Democrats either. Now, Democrats run on these issues, corporate Democrats, but do they actually do them when they're in power? Of course not. No, there's always a different excuse. Oh, well, the parliamentarian. We can't do this because of the rules. Oh, no. Well, the filibuster. What are you going to do? We can't get rid of the filibuster. No. That means we would actually have to do things to stay in power. Because, again, their excuse is, well, if we get rid of the filibuster, when Republicans win, then they're going to run roughshod all over us. Well, that's why you get rid of the filibuster and then do things that are popular with the American people so that they'll continue to vote you in. This is not difficult. All right? This is not hard. But that's the thing. Democrats do not want to do these things. That's why they won't unify with progressives, because, again, they would actually try to do these things. And the corporate donors, the corporate Democrats' owner donors, well, they don't want that. They don't want that at all. And so now with Joe Biden's, approval ratings being a disaster, and certainly we're facing disaster in the midterms that are upcoming, what does the establishment do? What did the centrists, the so-called centrists, do? Well, they decided to trot out Hillary Clinton to tell progressives to shut the fuck up.
I think that it is a time for some, careful thinking about what wins elections, and not just in deep blue districts where a Democrat and a liberal Democrat or so-called progressive Democrat is going to win. First of all, we don't know what the state of the map is going to be after all of the redistricting. It appears as though the Republicans in a number of states are doing their best to eliminate as many seats that Democrats can be competitive in. And so we've got to be very clear-eyed about what it's going to take to hold the House and the Senate in 2022 and to win the Electoral College, because also Republicans are doing everything they can to create an environment in which winning the Electoral College, even narrowly the way Joe Biden did, will be out of reach for a Democrat. So I understand why people want to argue for their priorities. That's what they believe they were elected to do. But at the end of the day, nothing is going to get done if you don't have a Democratic majority in the House and the Senate. And our majority comes from people who win in much more difficult districts. And our majority in the Senate comes from people who can win in not just blue states and hold those wins, as we saw didn't happen in Virginia, but can win in more purplish states.
So now, why are we taking advice about winning from someone who lost to Donald Trump? And not just to Trump, but also lost the 2008 primary against Barack Obama. And by the way, do you remember why she lost to Obama? Because Obama ran to the left of Hillary Clinton. Now, he made big promises. He didn't do them, of course. Did we get a public option? Obviously not. Did he close Guantanamo Bay? No, of course not. Did he do any of the stuff really that he ran on? No, of course not. There was no hope and change. But what we instead got was the right-wing Heritage Foundation Mitt Romney healthcare plan, the ACA, which is awful. But he promised during the election hope and change. We're going to do hope and change, and things are going to be so much better. We're going to do all these wonderful progressive things. Now, what did Joe Biden promise? Joe Biden promised big action on COVID. Now, what's going on with COVID? Omicron's spreading all over the place like wildfire. Hospitals are filled up. You can't find tests. In fact, you had Jen Psaki, I showed you that interview, who basically laughed at the idea of sending out free test kits to all Americans. Now they have this weirdo thing where it's insurance, and then the insurance will reimburse you. Then you got to go through a bunch of hoops, and it's a disaster. And being able to have those covered by insurance, why not just send them out free? Why involve private insurance at all? It's ridiculous. It's unnecessary. And by the way, all the pandemic aid for working people, what happened to that under Biden? Gone. It's gone. It's gone. We actually got less economic stimulus. Regular people, we actually got less under Biden than we did under Trump. Now, that doesn't mean like, oh, you should vote for Republicans because Republicans are better. No, Republicans are god-awful. I'm just pointing out, like, the perception here is that the Democrats have actually done less in that kind of stuff, in aid to regular working people, than the Republican Party. And that's a disaster. And if you want to actually win, you might want to step it up. And again, we don't have a public option. We don't have, student loan debt that's been canceled. All these things were promised. Clinton said, you got to give us a Democratic majority so we can actually do things. We do have a Democratic majority. We do. There are 51 Democrats right now. 51. Now, it's not enough to defeat the filibuster, but guess what? You can get rid of the filibuster. Now, by the way, you can say, wow, but what about Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema? Well, I'm going to argue that they're not the only ones that would block these bills. Now, they're the ones right now that are blocking bills, yes. But imagine if they weren't there. Well, you'd still have John Tester, Chris Coons, Dick Durbin. You have other corporate Democrats who basically get paid to stop progressive policy. And then you also have Hillary Clinton coming out there and telling you, expect nothing. Well, we've continued playing this game, and we haven't gotten anywhere. And so now she tells you to expect nothing, and then when, of course, Democrats inevitably lose because they didn't do anything, they didn't follow through on campaign promises, then what are they going to do? They're going to blame progressives, which, again, Hillary Clinton was already doing, and saying, oh, you should really tamp down on your expectations and just not expect anything. Go blue. Go blue. By the way, don't ask for things that people you want. Ask to elect Democrats that win. And you know what she means by that? She means try to appeal to Republicans. Now, why would you do that? Why would you do that? Why would anybody vote for Republican light when you have Republicans? Now, this Friedman article is another desperate attempt to try to push the party further to the right. And all I got to ask is maybe Democrats just want to lose. I mean, you know, do they? Do they? Because of, you know, if they do want to lose, well, then they're doing a pretty good job. Pretty good job of it. And now maybe they want to because if they do, they can sit back and fundraise on how terrible the Republican Party is, which they are. The Republican Party is a fascist party. And yet, the Democrats, they'll sit back. Nancy Pelosi will sit back and she'll raise tons and tons of money from corporate donors. And then, you know, if they lose, they can sit back and raise that money and not have the pressure on them to actually pass anything. And this is all while Republicans continue to go further and further right to become even more and more fascist. Now, if you want to prove me wrong, please do. Get some stuff passed. Get some real good stuff passed, right? Go, you know, get some real voting rights passed. Pass something on healthcare. Do a stimulus. Cancel student loan debt. Do something. Do a couple of things. It doesn't have to be everything. Obviously, we know that there are limits. But do something. Do something. For God's sakes. Prove us wrong. And I just don't think they're going to. Okay. All right. Yep, could do Medicare for all too. Using that power under a pandemic. All right. Yeah, disastrous story, as usual. All right, everybody. Let's see. Read a couple of super chats before I head out here. Let's see. Super chats and comments, of course. I just got to pull them up here real quick. Let's go here. There's more than, I know there's more than what came up on my screen earlier. All right, so Toddy Beck says that Kirsten Sinema's speech before was disgusting. I think it might have been the eulogy of American democracy for real. I didn't get a chance to listen to that, but I imagine it kind of sucks. Big Pharma and Soros and those damn pedos would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for boomers on the internet. Their only weak spot. Some good sarcasm there. I like it. Dango Bangle asked, the PPP loans, you mean the money, the equipment, and the trucks he and his family stole during the pandemic, all the way until he left? No, the TPP. The Trans-Pacific Partnership that he canceled. That's actually a good thing because when you read about it, that would have given a lot of power to corporations to sue governments for not basically, I believe there were provisions to allow these companies to sue entire countries if they lose out on any profits. And so, not good. Not good at all. Also, yeah, sure, let's model ourselves after a genocidal theocratic state. How about exterminating the Muslims? What's the worst that could happen? On Israel, let's see. Supreme Court says Biden vax mandate is unconstitutional. Yes, that is unfortunate news. So, hey, it looks like Omicron here to stay for some time. Having hate for Machinima does nothing for us until she's up again in 2022. I believe Manchin might be at 22, 24. Cinema might not be until like 24, 26. But I'll have to, of course, go and double check those numbers. But again, it's not just those two. There's rotating villains in the Democratic Party. And so, again, the other people that I mentioned, the corporate Democrats, Dick Durbin, John Tester, Chris Coons, and others, those are ones that are going to step up and defend their donors almost every single time. Can't wait until Deltacron hits. Reading about that as well. Disastrous. Okay. Twitch. Let's go over to Twitch here. Nothing new on Twitch, unfortunately. All right, so let's see. Let's raid, actually. We're in the stream. Do a left flank vets raid. To everybody else, thank you so much for going around the nation with me today. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Very important that you do so. We'll be back tomorrow with another fantastic show filled with depressing stories. Because of course, as usual, what you think we do happy stories here? No, of course not. We don't do happy stories here. We do disasters. Because that's the show. All right. Anyway, thank you. Love you all. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you tomorrow.
I'm a fatty fat though.
There's some whores in this house.
Like my knee tight. Tighten up my knee.
Uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
Please clap.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the